Billionaire ordered wine in French to humiliate a single dad, but he answered in 5 languages the moment Marcus saw the name on the invitation. His hands began to tremble. It was 6:47 p.m. on a Thursday evening, and he was standing in the cramped kitchen of his tiny apartment, holding a cream-colored envelope that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The invitation was to the prestigious Westbrook Gala, one of the most exclusive events in the entire city, the kind of event where millionaires and billionaires rubbed shoulders over champagne that cost more than his monthly rent. But there was something impossible about this invitation sitting in his hands. It didn't make sense. He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to belong to this world. Marcus was a single father. He worked 2 jobs, one as a translator during the day and another as a night janitor at a downtown office building, just to keep his 9-year-old daughter Sophia in a decent school and their small apartment from falling apart. His life was a careful balance of exhaustion and love, where every dollar counted and every moment not working was spent with the only person who truly mattered to him. The idea of attending a gala seemed so impossibly far from his reality that he almost threw the invitation away, but then he read the letter again, and his heart stopped completely. He had been selected to receive a community service award for his volunteer work at the youth center. Apparently, teaching underprivileged kids to speak multiple languages in his free time had caught someone's attention. For just a moment, Marcus felt seen. For just a moment, he felt like maybe his struggles, his sacrifices, his endless efforts to be a good father weren't invisible after all. Asterisk. If you believe in second chances, in the power of kindness, and in stories that remind us of the goodness still left in this world, please like this video, subscribe to Kindness Corner, and share it with someone who needs to hear this tonight. This channel is dedicated to celebrating the triumph of the human spirit over adversity, and your support helps us bring more inspiring stories to you. Now, let's continue. Asterisk. The night of the gala arrived, and Marcus stood in front of his closet, which contained exactly 2 suits. One was his funeral suit, worn and outdated. The other was a navy blue blazer he'd bought 5 years ago from a thrift store, carefully maintained and pressed. It would have to do. He dressed slowly, methodically, each movement a prayer of sorts. Sophia watched from the doorway of his bedroom, her small face serious and thoughtful. She didn't fully understand why her daddy was getting dressed up, but she understood that something important was happening. She helped him fix his tie, her little fingers working with the concentration of someone performing surgery. When he was finally ready, he knelt down and kissed her forehead, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. He promised her he would be careful, that he would make her proud. She extracted a promise from him that he would smile, because she said his smile made everything better. He agreed, though he felt far from smiling. The gala was being held at the Sterling, a mansion that belonged to one of the city's most prominent families. As Marcus arrived, he felt immediately small and out of place. The grand foyer was filled with glittering people in tailored designer clothes, diamonds catching the light like stars fallen to earth. Wait staff moved through the crowd with trays of expensive appetizers and glasses of wine that cost more than Marcus made in a week. He felt like an actor who had somehow wandered onto the wrong movie set, and any moment now, security would realize the mistake and escort him out. He clutched his invitation like a life raft, constantly aware that he didn't belong, that everyone could probably see right through him. The awards ceremony came and went. Marcus received his plaque, shook some hands, and tried not to cry when the presenter told the room about his work teaching languages to children who otherwise would have no access to that education. For those few minutes on stage, he felt almost worthy of being there. But the feeling was fragile, like soap bubble floating through the crowd. It popped the moment he stepped down and caught the eye of a man across the room watching him with an expression of cold amusement. This man was Marcus Blackwell, the billionaire who had built an empire in tech and finance and now controlled more wealth than some small nations. He was known for his sharp wit, his ruthlessness in business, and his complete disdain for anyone he deemed beneath him. He stood at the center of a group of admirers, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than Marcus's car, and when their eyes met, something dangerous passed between them. It was the kind of look that suggested Blackwell saw Marcus as a curiosity, an anomaly, something to be tested. The billionaire excused himself from his group and began walking toward Marcus with the confidence of someone who had never been told no in his entire life. What happened next would have broken a weaker man. Blackwell approached Marcus with a smile that didn't reach his eyes and suggested they continue their conversation at the wine bar. It was phrased as an invitation, but it felt like a command. As they stood before an impressive array of wines, the billionaire's true intent became clear. He selected a rare French vintage and turned to Marcus with a tone dripping with condescension. "I'm sure someone like you probably doesn't have much experience with fine wine," he said, and then he proceeded to speak entirely in French, rapid-fire and complex, discussing the wine's terroir, its tannins, its history, in language so sophisticated that it became clear he was doing it on purpose. The room seemed to grow quiet. Even the other guests sensed what was happening. They were witnessing a deliberate, calculated humiliation. The billionaire's friends chuckled, waiting for Marcus to stumble, to reveal himself as an imposter, to crack under the pressure of this moment. But something extraordinary happened. Marcus took a deep breath, and when he spoke, his voice was steady and perfectly fluent. He responded in French, not just matching Blackwell's vocabulary, but actually expanding on it, sharing his own knowledge of wine with a depth and passion that was absolutely genuine. He discussed the specific vineyard where this particular wine was produced, its history dating back to the 1800s, the family that had maintained it through wars and economic collapse. Then, without pausing, he shifted to Spanish, continuing the conversation with native-level proficiency. Then Italian, then German, then Mandarin Chinese. The billionaire's expression shifted from smugness to shock to something almost like fear as he realized that this man in the outdated suit, this janitor, this single father, possessed something he didn't. Real knowledge, real capability, real character. Marcus wasn't performing. He was simply being himself, a polyglot who had learned languages not for prestige or profit, but because he wanted to connect with people, to understand the world, to give his daughter every possible advantage. The room had gone completely silent now. Everyone was watching. Marcus remained perfectly composed, finishing his thoughts with eloquence and grace, never once showing anger or bitterness at the attempt to humiliate him. When he was finally done, he turned to Blackwell and said something that would echo through the rest of that evening and far beyond. He spoke quietly, but his words carried the weight of a life lived with integrity. He said that he understood why Blackwell had done what he'd done, that people often feared what they didn't understand, and that he harbored no ill will. He hoped that perhaps, if Blackwell was willing, they might actually have a real conversation sometime, because there was more to connect them as human beings than what separated them. The silence that followed was deafening, and then something completely unexpected happened. Blackwell's hard exterior cracked, and for just a moment something vulnerable showed through. He excused himself and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Marcus stood there, wine glass still in hand, surrounded by people who were staring at him with new eyes. The woman who had been presenting awards that evening approached him, tears streaming down her face, and told him that what he had just done took more courage than any act of wealth could ever demonstrate. She told him that this was exactly why his work mattered, why kindness and perseverance and genuine character were the things that the world actually needed. But the story doesn't end there, because the most powerful part was still to come. Weeks later, Marcus received a call. It was from Marcus Blackwell's office. The billionaire wanted to meet with him. Marcus's first instinct was fear. What did this man want now? But he had learned something important about himself that night at the gala. He had learned that his own dignity couldn't be taken from him unless he allowed it. He agreed to the meeting. When Marcus arrived at Blackwell's office on the top floor of the city's tallest building, he was bracing himself for confrontation. Instead, he found a different man. Blackwell looked tired, almost human for the first time. He admitted to Marcus that he had been thinking about that night constantly. He told him that growing up incredibly wealthy had insulated him from people, had made him cynical, had taught him that wealth was the only measure of worth. But watching Marcus that night, seeing someone with so little in material terms carry himself with such genuine dignity, had shaken something loose in him. He wanted to apologize, but more than that, he wanted to change. He had been following Marcus's work at the youth center. He wanted to know if Marcus would be willing to accept a donation, a substantial one, to expand the program. Not as charity, Blackwell was careful to specify, but as an investment in what he now believed was the most valuable work happening in the city. Marcus wept when he heard this, not because of the money, though it would change everything for the children he was helping. He wept because he understood that on that night at the gala, something had shifted in the universe. He had faced cruelty with grace, humiliation with integrity, and arrogance with compassion. He hadn't fought back with anger or bitterness. Instead, he had simply been the best version of himself, and that had been enough to crack open a wall that money had built for decades. Sophia would get more opportunities now. The center would expand. More children would learn languages, would dream bigger, would understand that their circumstances didn't have to define their futures. Asterisk. Now I want to turn to you, the viewers, because if this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, I need you to let me know. Comment below and tell me what this story meant to you. Tell me about a time when you were underestimated and rose above it, or a time when you witnessed someone show grace under pressure. Engage with this video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and let's build a community that celebrates these moments of human triumph. Asterisk. The final lesson of this story is simple but profound. Your circumstances don't define your character. Marcus was a single father working 2 jobs. He could have been bitter about his situation. He could have arrived at that gala defensive and angry, but instead he chose to show up as his best self. He chose grace over vengeance, humility over arrogance, and compassion over pride. That's what real strength looks like. That's what real courage is. It's not the ability to humiliate others. It's the ability to face humiliation without losing yourself. It's understanding that true wealth isn't measured in dollars but in the depth of your character and the love in your heart. Marcus and Marcus, the single father and the billionaire, became friends after that night. Not the kind of friendship born from obligation or transaction, but genuine friendship based on mutual respect. Blackwell regularly visited the youth center, and he was often seen sitting with the children, listening to them practice their languages, asking questions, genuinely interested in their lives and dreams. He had been transformed by meeting someone who possessed something he had never been able to buy, authentic worth that came from inside, not from a bank account. And Marcus, for his part, had learned that even people who seem most lost, most hardened by the world, still have the capacity for change and growth. Asterisk. Before we finish, I want to ask you for one more thing. Please comment below with the words "kindness wins" if you believe that the story Marcus lived that night is the kind of story we need more of in this world. Let's build a chain of positivity, a record of everyone who believes that grace, compassion, and integrity are more powerful than wealth, status, or arrogance. This is what Kindness Corner is all about, and your comment means everything. Asterisk. As Marcus tucked Sophia into bed that night after the meeting with Blackwell, she asked him what had changed. She could sense it in her father's energy, in the way he seemed lighter somehow, less burdened by the world. He picked her up and held her close, breathing in that strawberry shampoo scent, and he told her that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is be exactly who you are, with full integrity and full heart. He told her that the world would try to shame her, to make her feel small, to convince her that she wasn't enough. But if she remembered that her worth came from inside, from how she treated others and how she showed up in the world, then no one could ever truly touch her. She would always be enough. That's a lesson Marcus had learned the hard way, and it was the greatest gift he could ever pass on to his daughter. Greater than any money, greater than any opportunity, because in the end, character is the only thing that lasts.